Hi, everybody. I see people are slowly being admitted to the webinar. Welcome. Hopefully you guys are having a good week so far. We were just talking about it doesn't really feel like Tuesday, but we don't know what it feels like. But we're lucky enough to have some nice weather. So hopefully you guys are too, and having a nice fall. So tonight is going to be a little bit different because really the stars are going to be some students tonight. So let me go to the next slide. Maybe. All right, so this is a day in the life of an SCO student. And tonight you are going to hear from some of our student ambassadors. So they are current students, and I'm simply going to moderate the session. My name is Ashley Cates, and I'm a Student Services and Admissions Officer. I see some very familiar names that are joining us. So as you know, typically I answer a lot of emails concerning admissions or answer questions via phone. I also set up campus tours. I am a big part of the interview process as well. And then I also facilitate webinars like this on a monthly basis. So tonight, my role though is just to moderate and ask some questions. And we have come up with some questions that are frequently asked of the students. So this is what candidates would like to know from a student perspective about what it's like to be an SEO student and what it's like to live in Memphis as well. So as we go through, we're going to try to address as many different topics as possible, but by all means, if you think of some questions that we have not touched on, please feel free to write them out in the question box, the Q&A box, and we'll be sure to address them at the end of the session. So tonight, our panelists are Allie, Aniel, Braden, and Michelle, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves a little bit in just a little bit. But these are our four panelists for tonight. So we have 2 second year and 2 third years, but you can also see that they have come from different parts of the country. So we have Colorado, Georgia, Kansas, and New Jersey represented. So pretty much all of the regions of the country. So without further ado, I want to get started. Oh, I do need to tell you that this is being recorded. So please know that this will be recorded and posted. Once it's downloaded, we'll be able to post it on our website for future reference. So just to get started, where are you guys from and what is your alma mater? So Allie, we'll start with you.
Sounds good. So I grew up in Pueblo West, Colorado, and I ended up going to undergrad at the University of Portland in Oregon before coming here to SCO. And just to answer that one here, I think I didn't think I would end up in the South, but I'm glad I did. I really chose SCO because all the things that I realized were important to me in comparing schools, SCO just really excelled in every single one of them. And I knew it wasn't a compromise in any direction. I think the academic training that we get is phenomenal. The clinical training that we get is probably not second to any other school. Financially, it's a good option. Community is amazing here, both at SCO and in Memphis. It's just a great place to be, and an easy decision to invest my 4 years of optometry training in. So I love it here. And I knew that right away that it was a place I could belong. So that's why I went with it.
Thank you, Allie. Aniel?
Hi, I'm from Acworth, Georgia. I went to University of Georgia, and I chose SEO for a lot of the same reasons that Allie did. First and foremost, it was a very sound financial decision for me. It was one of the more affordable optometry schools, and is definitely in a budget-friendly city as far as rent goes and the cost of living. And I also wanted to go to an institution that had its eye center close to to its campus, which SEO did also. SEO also has a great reputation as far as its clinicians, its board passage rates. Also to mention the Hay Center. Those were also the foundations for my decision for choosing SEO.
Great, thank you. Braden?
Yeah, I am from Hays, Kansas, and I went to undergrad at Fort Hays State University, also in Hays, Kansas. I think we all kind of chose SCO for pretty similar reasons. One of the big reasons I chose SCO is being from a small town. I kind of wanted to keep that kind of community type feel, and I think anybody who goes to SCO will tell you we're all kind of a family here, and no matter who you meet, you never meet a stranger. So it's really nice to have that sort of as a back, everybody behind you and really help you when during your time here at SCO. And then also, I wanted somewhere that prepared me to be a good clinician, and I think SCO's clinic, like Aniel said as well, is something that's really going to prepare us all to be really good doctors. So.
Okay, thank you. And last but not least, Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle and I'm from Hillsdale. It's kind of a small town in northern New Jersey. And I went to undergrad in near Boston at Brandeis University. And I chose SCO actually as one of my top choices, even though I applied to a lot of schools in the Northeast. And one of my coworkers from one of my internships in college told me about SCO. And she was actually like a mother of a patient, and she talked about SCO like very highly, as well as many optometrists that I knew. So that was one of the reasons why I, put it at the top of my list. And it was one of my first interviews as well. So I just compared all the other schools to SCO, and SCO just really checked all the boxes on my list. As Aniel and Ali said, like financially, it was just a very sound decision. I also love that Memphis is a big city, but it's also kind of a smaller city in terms of how it feels. So it's not overwhelming, but it's still kind of an exciting place to be. And I think it's a really great place to be a student. I also, I felt like when I came on campus that everyone was super welcoming and very friendly in a very genuine way. And I didn't feel that anywhere else. And as others have mentioned, we have a very, really great reputation of having high board passage rates. And that was really impressive to me when I was looking up the school, as well as just meeting a lot of the faculty and looking them up to, just knowing that I would get the best education that I possibly can. So it was a really easy decision for me to choose SCO as well.
Thank you. I appreciate your introductions. Okay, so the first question up is, how would you describe the general makeup of your class, and do most students come from the South? Allie, I'm going to let you take this one.
You got it. It's kind of a broad question, I suppose, but I would say that our classes are fairly diverse. A decent portion of students come from southern states, I think, which makes sense just geographically that this is a good regional school. But I definitely think that a lot of students come from other parts of the country as well, like myself included, and happily so. And I think it's increasingly that way as well. Like fewer and fewer, for instance, are from Tennessee, even making up our class numbers. And it's really nice to see that from a learning standpoint, but also like a socializing standpoint. Like you get to meet a lot of different people being here, especially with the class size being so large. We have 130 plus each year, and I didn't know that was an important thing before I became one of those 130 some people. But I think it really does make a big impact on your learning. And I say that to everybody. You get so many different eyeballs to practice on. And that's big. You think everyone coming to optometry school has normal eyes, but some do and some don't. And it's kind of fun to see even on yourself, like what weird things you have going on. So that's really helpful. And then also having a large class size means you just have that much more support socially, academically, and even professionally when you're done. So that's what I've got to say about those.
All right, thank you. So Michelle, Allie just talked about the third year class. So what about for the second year class? Do you think the answer would be any different regarding the general makeup of your class?
I would say that the second year class is quite diverse. I think that there's about 30 states represented in our second year class. And there are a good number of portion of students that are from throughout the US. We even have 2 international students from, I think they came from China originally, but they went to school in the US, and Chinese was their first language. So it definitely is a diverse class. And even though I'm from the Northeast, I don't feel like I can't relate to anybody. Like everybody really tries to share their cultures of their different states, and it doesn't feel like isolating at all. And in terms of class size, I think I really agree with what Ali said, and she put it really well that there's just more sets of eyeballs to practice on. And you never know like who in your class has a like eye injury, and there's like this one person in our class who has like color blindness and stuff, and it's really cool to discover that, and there's more chances to discover that with a bigger class size. And I've just really enjoyed being able to interact with more people, getting to make more friends and meet new people every year. So it's definitely a great thing to have a like 130 plus person class size.
Great, thank you. Okay, so Braden, can you explain what we are looking at in regards to the academic facilities?
Yeah, absolutely. So the picture on the left would be the general classroom. So that's where the lectures will be held. Just in general, those are really nice. Those all just got redone. And that it's really helpful because each seat has, first of all, each seat is handpicked by the students, which kind of points out to the fact that SCO does a whole lot to personalize everything to make it as easy on the students as possible. I think that just really helps in that it really lets you focus on school and not have to worry about a lot of the other things. You're not sitting in a really uncomfortable chair all day yelling at everyone when you need to say something. Each seat has a microphone as well as a plug-in, which makes it just really nice and easy for the classroom experience that you have at SCO. The two pictures on the right would be of the lab that we have. So our lab is very similar to what you're going to see in clinic, which helps for, so it has 26 exam lanes per side. So we have two of those labs. And they're set up the exact same way that they are set up in clinic. So once you get to work with all the different machines and all the equipment in lab, it'll be a nice, easy transition into clinic when you get there. So definitely lots of space to work at with all your classmates and practice. There's never short of time to go and practice your skills, which again just aids in helping you become the clinicians that SCO really helps us to become. So,
Thank you. Okay. So these are really some commonly asked questions that applicants have, really concerning about the schedule, what it is that you do in the classes and the labs. So Aniel, can you describe the class, lab, clinic schedule?
Absolutely. So it's a little different each year. So right now, as a third year student, we have class in the morning and we have clinic in the afternoon, along with one lab during the week. And it's very manageable. I think that was also the same during our first year. You also have class in the morning and your labs in the afternoon. And your second year, that's switched. You have your labs in the morning and then your classes in the afternoon. And again, it's very easy to manage. Everybody's on the same schedule, like as far as that goes, within your class, so that's nice. And then you are also within your small lab group, so you get to see the same people throughout the week and within your labs. That's especially nice, especially now during COVID, where social interaction is a little bit limited. And then, did you want me to go to the next question?
Sure.
All right, and then so what I'm enjoying most right now about being in clinic is definitely the patient interactions, just being able to see to my patient's needs and really start to take control of being a student doctor and just getting to know my staff clinicians on a more professional level. That's been very enjoyable for me because you see them in class, and right now they're teaching us virtually, but also to see them in person in clinic and get to learn from these great professors. It's just been absolutely invaluable. And then as far as what I'm looking forward to later in the program, I'm definitely looking forward to our externships. You decide your externships during the beginning of the summer of your third year. And so I'm really looking forward to that for the fourth year.
Great. And just so that everyone knows, approximately how many hours a semester do you take? Anya, you can answer that.
I'm trying to remember. I want to say right now it's. Oh, I'm blanking. Allie, do you know how many hours we're taking right now?
Right now, I'm not sure. I think for the first 2 years, it's like 24-ish, maybe 21, some low 20
Yeah.
number. And then right now, it's way less than that
Is
for
it
third year.
18? I think in your third year it's 18.
Okay.
So it's still definitely a lot, but it's manageable. Our advisors and the people who make the schedule definitely make sure that our clinic and class schedule is manageable. And even your first year, I know 20 hours seems like a lot, but everybody's in the same boat with you. Everybody is studying with you, and you learn to manage it, and you learn how to manage your time. So it definitely becomes doable.
And Braden, what is it that you enjoy most about class lab this semester?
What I enjoy about class is we're starting to get into some of the more optometry oriented classes to where we're actually learning things we're going to see, in clinic and stuff like that. Um, and one thing I wanted to mention about the amount of hours you're taking, I always thought it was really interesting because coming from undergrad, if I heard I was taking 24 hours, I would be having a mini heart attack or a full on heart attack. But once you get here, it's really not all, you don't notice that you're even in that many hours, just because it's all very cohesive. And when you start getting into going from class to lab, and everything starts to mesh together to where it really is super manageable, and you really don't have too many problems with getting around that. So
Great. And what is it that you're looking forward to either later in your second year or in your third year?
well, I really enjoy right now in lab, we're doing a lot of the eye health exams. So we're learning the portion where you're actually looking into the eye, and getting into more of the medical optometry type of learning in theory. And then obviously next semester and into third year, I'm really excited to start to get into clinic and actually get to do these on real patients, who, will kind of give you a little bit of a different challenge than your classmates might have. So um, hoping that once I get there, everything will kind of mesh together, and I'll be really ready to start seeing patients in my third year.
All right. So, Michelle, about how much time do you typically dedicate to studying, and when do you study? Where do you study?
Yeah, so I typically try and study about 3 to 5 hours a day, ranging sometimes in the morning to after lecture. And I typically study right now in my room. I have a desk in my room, and it's just kind of like a nice quiet space where I can really focus. But there are times when it does get a little bit hard to just like stay in my room all day. So I do sometimes go out to Crosstown Concourse, which is this it's this building it used to be like an old mall, but it has a lot of cafes and restaurants, and lots of cool spots to study there. And so sometimes I'll go there on the weekend and I'll just camp out there for the entire day and just study for the whole day, get a lot of studying done. So those are kind of just my rhythms throughout the week. And I typically also like every day try and spend an hour going to school and practicing in the lab, and kind of break out my practice time so that I'm not practicing like 3 hours on one day and like kind of tiring me out. I like to go just 1 hour. So that's typically what it looks like. And I would say that adapting to school during COVID has been pretty interesting. I would say, like, I'm sure everyone agrees that we're probably inside more than we are outside, and probably studying by ourselves a lot more than we used to. So it's definitely been an adjustment, I would say. I'm from New Jersey, and so it's been interesting not being able to like go home as much or visit, because I think that I probably would have taken more weekends to go home and visit. But it really also is okay. Like, I'm fine with it because we do have a lot of skills that we're learning in lab. And so it's actually pretty exciting to be able to go to school on the weekend and practice. I don't find it to be like a burdensome thing to go. And if anything, I think that it's also just taught me how to be like more grateful for things. Like, I think that SCO has really taken a lot of measures to make sure that everyone is being safe. And the security team is at school from like 5 o'clock in the morning until I think sometimes midnight. And so just realizing that there's a lot of people at the school trying to allow us to continue to learn, I think has really helped the mentality that, you know, one day hopefully this will be over. But yeah, I think that SCO has done a lot of measures to help try and make it normal and keep it, you know, still as enjoyable as it can be.
Thank you. Allie, do you have anything that you would add to about adaptation to school during this pandemic?
I think Michelle's perspective is really good. The school in general, I would say this about a lot of different things, but especially COVID. I think the school adapts really well to anything, honestly, and is very transparent about what decisions are being made and why, and how we're all helping each other through it with what's needed, and what people are expecting of us. And yeah, so I think it's been a fairly smooth transition in a very not smooth event, but I appreciate what the school has done, and that kind of goes for anything. Like, they are very supportive whatever happens for us in like throughout our entire time here as students. So I think it's been pretty good, even with classes themselves. Like, everything was already recorded before COVID happened, and it was a very smooth transition getting people together, figuring out how to make it as smooth as possible for staff and faculty to be teaching online and for us to be learning online. Yeah, everyone really just comes together, and I think that's been one of the beauties of this happening. One of the bright sides, at least, is being able to see that. So they've done a good job.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now we are looking at some of the clinical facilities. Anya, can you describe what we're looking at here?
Yeah, so to our left, we have the eye center. All right, and then it looks like we have the back end of we're looking at the tower in the back end of the atrium. So the new part of the SCO campus. So that is where the SCO classrooms are. That's where our campus store is, and there's a lot of seating area on the inside, and then further out from the picture that's where the parking lot is, where everybody's parking right now. Further to the left of the picture, and then you can't see it, that is where the eye center is located. We're looking at the back end of SCO. And then to our right, and the upper right, we have our board practice room. And so that is where students can go during their third and fourth year to start practicing for their third part of boards. Generally, students will start to prepare for that during the fall or spring of their fourth year. But that room is available for you to practice with your classmates. There are casino grade cameras in there so you can record yourself. There are also blacked out windows so you can have somebody watch you and give you critiques on your techniques. And then at the bottom, we have our laser suite. We have a medical practice within SCO that is very convenient for our patient base if they do not have transportation, or if they would prefer to stay in-house. It also allows us to have greater follow-up with our patients. And so we have an SLT and YAG laser within our laser suite, and students will shadow those surgeries that are performed in there.
Great, thank you. And here are some other pictures. So Michelle, can you tell us what we're looking at here?
Sure. So these are some of the examples of SCO's clinic sites that are off campus. So the one on the very left side is Focal Point at Crosstown Concourse. And I talked a little bit about Crosstown as a place to study, but it also is a place where there's a lot of local businesses and restaurants, as well as Focal Point. Focal Point is one of our clinics that targets more of like a higher end, the frames are like higher end quality, I guess. And so they reach a different patient demographic that normally we wouldn't perhaps see through the eye center. So that's just another way to get to experience a different kind of clinical care, potentially, and perhaps a different experience working in the optical there. And on the right, upper right, is the University Eye Care at the University of Memphis. So that's also another external clinic site where you can go and work with some of the athletes at the University of Memphis and some students there. That could be a good exposure to vision therapy, as well as some of the more uh, university, just like a university like needs that potentially we might not be able to see at the eye center. And then Mobile Eyes is a really cool kind of mobile that we have that drives around different areas of Memphis, and we can provide eye care within the vehicle. So it's really awesome. Like, you step in there and there's like a section that's filled with eyeglasses, all sorts of frames. And then there's a section that has the exam room, and it's all within a car. So it's kind of cool. And I think that we will, I think that starts like your second year. You can do screenings within Mobile Eyes. And I think you see a lot of like pediatric patients on there, learn how to give eye exams in more of like a smaller and tighter space. So that's also a really cool opportunity.
Okay. Okay. So Braden, when do you get to start having clinical experiences? And then what types of clinical experiences do you have?
So really, the nice thing about SCO is you can begin having quote unquote clinical experiences even in your first year through different things like RAM trips and SPOSH, kind of going out and doing basically whatever you have already learned. They will kind of allow you to do to help with different screenings and things like that. With our actual clinic at SCO, we start that a little bit closer to third year. Third year is when you start seeing patients on your own, and then towards the end of the second year as well, you get to basically tag along with a third year as they're working in the clinic. So you start to get used to the clinic already in your second year, which is a really good way to transition us into actually starting to see patients in our third year. So then also third year and towards the end of second year, like Michelle was saying, is when we get to start doing different outreach clinics like Mobile Eyes. And then we'll start to work in Focal Point and then the Memphis, the University Eye Care into our third year.
All right. So, Allie, what do you think are some of the biggest differences between your undergraduate and professional studies?
I think I went to a liberal arts school. So besides having lots and lots of different types of classes, besides just the sciences, I think something that really stands out to me between undergrad and here is just how much the content that you're learning overlaps. For instance, in undergrad, I would have to study one subject really hard and then put it away, move on to something completely different. And then it was really hard to juggle those kinds of things. Whereas here at SCO with optometry, kind of like we said earlier, we're taking like 20 plus credits at one time, but it doesn't necessarily feel like it because there's so much overlap, and that really helps you study. It helps with the test weeks that we have. Honestly, I think it really helps reinforce a lot of the concepts better than I would have ever understood them. Obviously, get to learn all of those things together and on top of each other, and I think that's a beautiful thing about how we are learning here.
Great. Michelle, what do you think is the biggest difference between your undergraduate and professional studies?
I am actually pretty similar to Allie in that I did go to a liberal arts school too. And I did write a lot of papers and read a lot of research articles in undergrad through my neuro major. So I would say that just the type of classes is different, and the type of learning style was different in that I didn't have to read as much, I guess, with optometry. It's a lot of it's a lot of concepts that, you know, is just if you understand the big picture, you'll understand the different, you know, different pathologies and stuff. It's definitely more straightforward, I feel like, than writing a paper would be. I wasn't used to making a lot of flashcards, and I definitely do think that flashcard learning is something that has been a different type of remote or just rote learning, or different kind of learning style than I did in undergrad. And so, yeah, I think that, like Ali said, a lot of things just blend together and make a lot of sense. And it really helps to solidify the concepts that we learn. Like, for example, we'll learn something in optics our first year, and then we'll see it come up again when we're learning things in all sorts of subjects again second year. So it's really cool to see that things, kind of build upon each other. And so it definitely makes learning a lot more enjoyable because you know that you're learning things with a purpose. Um, and as for like my transition into optometry school, I think that it definitely is a transition going directly into a grad school program with 26 credits. And some people might take it easier than others, and it might be easier for some people, but I think that everyone kind of goes at their own pace. And to start off like optometry school with so much new stuff, it definitely can be a challenge. But something that I've realized with the way that SCO structures their curriculum is that in the fall semester, they have the first midterm week like 3 weeks into the semester. So you're not having a ton of information on the first set of exams. And I think they do that every single year. And that really helps because even though the first set is easier than the rest, kind of know that you can do it. You've done the 1 week, and you know that you can tackle the other 2 midterm weeks. So definitely a transition, I would say, for me at least, but manageable for sure.
Actually, that's kind of a good segue though. Like, so Anya, how are the exams structured?
So every week, or sorry, during the week, you'll have like a midterm week. That's what we call them, a midterm week. And you'll have 1 to 2 tests during each day of the week, depending on the testing schedule. It's nice because you have all of your tests for all of your classes during that 1 week. I usually equate it to like your finals week that you have in your undergraduate studies, except you have that twice a year, and then you have your finals at the end of the year. This can seem intimidating, but it's actually a benefit, in my opinion, because all of your classes are going at the same pace, and your tests are all within that 1 week. So you don't have a test on Monday 1 week, and then the next week you have a test on Tuesday, and the following week you have a test on Wednesday. All your tests are within 1 week, and then after that week you kind of have a chance to breathe, and then everything kind of resets, and then all your classes begin with the material again. And so it's nice because it's all paced out for you. So I've really enjoyed that. That was something that was a little off to me, but then as I've gotten to experience it, I've greatly enjoyed it.
All right, thank you. So now we're going to transition into student involvement. And at SCO, we greatly value involvement and service, kindness towards others, and taking leadership positions as well. And so you see some pictures of just various organizations, student organizations, and we have over 20 of them that range in different ways. So they could be specialty areas, they could be merit-based, social fraternity, and also some that are community or volunteer-oriented. And so you're just seeing some pictures from different experiences. But Brayden, are you involved in any of the extracurricular activities at SCO?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are, like you said, very many different options for what to get into at SCO. I'm part of quite a few organizations, things like Private Practice Club, intramurals for the sports-minded people, things like Ocular Disease Club, different opportunities like that around school, sort of maybe to learn more about optometry. And then there are things like the RAM trips is a different group that will go to different even parts of like Tennessee, Mississippi, closer places to provide actual eye care. So you can get into clubs where you actually, do more optometry in the community. And then there are things like the social fraternity Ashley mentioned, to where after something like midterm weeks, typically they will throw sort of like a big get together for the SCO students, kind of so everyone can kind of take a deep collective breath together. So that's again just a really nice way after going through all of this for so many weeks with with your classmates. You get a chance to really bond and get closer with the people that you're going to spend a lot of time with over the next 4 years. So then that just kind of helps to make the whole experience come together and make you a lot more comfortable here at SCO.
And Brayden, how do you manage your free time? The little free time that you do have, what do you like to do?
I would say honestly, I have quite a bit more free time than you might think as a graduate student. You do have to put a lot of time into school, but there are a lot of times that you can have for yourself. So I like to do a lot of sports. So I'm really active in the intramural department. And then you have time to work out, go hang out with your friends. There are a lot of things to do around town on the weekends and things like that. So you're really never bored when you're not studying. So um, there's one pretty cool thing here in Memphis also that we have is called Memphis Rock. So that's like a rock climbing thing here in Memphis. So that's not something I've ever had before in a small town. So you can just about do anything that you like. There are a lot of green spaces as well to just kind of come and relax, whether it be on the weekends or during the week if you have a free hour or two, kind of just to go enjoy being outside, especially in a time like this where COVID is trying to keep us inside and ruin our minds.
So Allie, how about you? What are you involved in at SCO?
Uh, a few things. It's hard to keep track, but some of the big ones that I love would, first and foremost, SFOSH or SFOSH, depending on how you say it. I was able to go on a trip to Cartagena, Colombia, my first year, and experience that big international organization that puts on those kind of trips and what a student chapter of that looks like. And that was phenomenal, getting to see some of the communities in Central and South America that have very diverse visual needs that aren't necessarily being met, and how we can kind of help provide some of that, as well as encourage their own infrastructure and find kind of more sustainable ways for them to be able to provide in their communities. So that's really cool. I've been part of that all 3 years with different positions within it, like fundraising and coordinating some of the travel. So I love that. I also think it's really cool at SCO having so many involvement opportunities within student chapters of other national organizations like the American Optometric Association and the American Academy of Optometry. Going to those conferences and participating in the student chapters is really cool and a great way to meet other students as well as other professionals. And I think SCO does a great job of helping you kind of put a foot into that networking world and the larger community of optometry in general. And then, yeah, I mean, Contact Lens Society, there's optometric disease, there's a lot. And I think one of the exciting things is that there are so many opportunities, and even like there are some days when you don't really want to think about eyeballs any more than you have to, but then there's other days where it's just so exciting and you really want to go to this club meeting. And it's nice that there are so many awesome ones to choose from.
And what do you like to do in your downtime?
It varies, but I really like to get out and explore Memphis. I think there's so much out there still on my bucket list. So tons and tons of food places to try. So if you're thinking of coming to Memphis at all, start a list. And then the green spaces, like Brayden was saying, there's a lot of those, and it's always worth going to kind of get out of your head. I like going for walks on Mud Island as well, because there's dogs everywhere and they just always make you happy. But exercising, talking to classmates, getting to know them. Yeah, I mean, there's something of everything.
Great. So Michelle, is there anything that surprised you about optometry school?
The bills. I'm just kidding. I think that aside from just like the move from all the way across the country. I think that I was probably the most surprised that everything did seem to follow like a logical flow. I guess I just didn't really expect the curriculum to be so well structured. And I also think that I wasn't expecting to see like so much of our optometry, just like the application of optometry come into our lectures. And I actually didn't really think too much about this when I was applying for optometry school, but I didn't think about how important it was for professors to be optometrists themselves. And what surprised me when I, had all my lectures my first year was that every single one of the professors was an optometrist practicing in our very clinic. And they would bring in cases of how they saw someone like the past week having this like an ocular, some like endothelial damage of the cornea or something, like in ocular anatomy, and then they would bring it into our class and relate it to what we were learning. And I never really thought about the importance of that. So it was really surprising and just really cool that we were learning from people and that they were applying what they saw in clinic that week to they were teaching us. So it was a pleasant surprise, I think, to have that. And I'm really glad that I chose SCO, even though I didn't think about that when I was applying. And then have I found anything important but underrelated aspect of SCO that I would not have learned about through a campus visit? I think that it I think that SCO is part of a greater community of Memphis, and that if you just visit SCO, you wouldn't see the greater Memphis population per se, and just the greatness of the city itself. And I think that Memphis, from the surface level, there might be stereotypes about the city or things that people might assume about Memphis just by walking around. But I think there's so much. The first thought that I had when I visited was that there's so much potential to the city. Like, there's just so many developments that are happening throughout the city, like city development. And I think that really contributes to SCO because we're seeing patients from this very city, and they come in with all their backgrounds and the diverse experiences that they've had throughout their life. And I think that's really underrated because as clinicians, like we want to be great eye care providers, but we also want to be just serving people's needs in general and helping them in a holistic way too as health providers. So I think Memphis, just as a city, there's just so much greatness to the people and the city itself, and you can't necessarily just figure that out from one campus visit sometimes. And I guess I can answer the last one too, since I already started, but what I wish I knew before beginning optometry school, I think that I would have wished I took more anatomy classes in undergrad, because that we do learn a lot of neuroanatomy, we learn ocular anatomy, and we learn systemic anatomy. So we take a lot of anatomy classes our first year, and I didn't really know that we would need that much anatomy. So my undergrad experience in anatomy was very little. And I would recommend that if anyone wanted to get a head start, I guess, on learning anatomy and being more familiar with it, perhaps taking some classes in that during undergrad would be my suggestion for that.
Great, thank you, Michelle. Aniel, has there been anything that surprised you about optometry school?
Yes. So I guess the biggest thing, I wasn't necessarily surprised, but something that has like come to me that I've been incredibly thankful for that I was not expecting, was just the network that you build within optometry. And it starts the very first day that you start attending optometry school, the first day that you go to classes. You're building your network within your classmates, and then also within the clinicians that teach at your optometry school, whichever school. And even when you go to conferences, you're meeting different people and you're networking and you're just building that network. I have been very fortunate to have met a few different optometrists that have really poured into me because of my different interests. And so you're just constantly meeting different people, building that network. And then as I've gotten more involved, optometry is it's just such a big, vast field, but it's gotten so much smaller because of the network and the connections. And you find out that people know other people that you want to get to know, and they can get you in touch with them. And so that has been, I would say, just a blessing in disguise and something that I wasn't really expecting, but I've been very thankful for. And that also ties into just like getting involved. As I've gotten more involved, those opportunities have definitely opened up and expanded. And so that has definitely been very impressive for me. And then an underrated aspect about SEO would be, I'll just kind of echo Michelle on this. It didn't really hit home until I started in clinic, was that your professors who are teaching your classes are also in clinic with you, walking through your patient cases with you. So your professors that are teaching you pharmacology are in clinic with you. The professor are teaching you medical pathology are in clinic with you. And so they're presenting the cases that they see in clinic, but you're also seeing your own patient cases, and they're right alongside with you. So these same great minds that are teaching you in class are right beside you in clinic, like walking with you through your cases. And that has been absolutely awesome to see and to work alongside them. I've just learned so much from the professors and clinicians that I've had. So that's one thing that I've been very thankful for, is that SCO is a single purpose school, and that I think all of our classes except for one are taught by optometrists. And as far as what I wish I knew before beginning optometry school, I know everybody shadows a lot, but I wish I had shadowed different types of optometrists and different modalities. I wish I had shadowed an optometrist within vision therapy, an optometrist that was within low vision. I wish I just had been more varied within what I had shadowed within. I shadowed different types of practice modalities, but not different specialties. So definitely get as much exposure as you can, because you're going to find things that you love within optometry school, but I wish I had been exposed to them before coming in.
Allie, what do you wish that you knew before beginning optometry school?
I have to say my answer to that is very, very much geared toward the importance of legislation to the field. I did not know that made such a big difference in how we would learn and practice optometry, and how different it can be between states, and how important it is that we're involved in those conversations and moving the field forward. And in general, the public health and education about what optometry is, why it's important, all of that. I didn't quite understand how much work there was to be done before already being here and so passionate about it.
And Brayden, what do you wish that you knew?
I think the one thing I kind of wish I knew, let's see here, was just sort of how nice it is to have, like Ali was saying, to have everyone, and Anya as well, have being taught by just doctors is a lot different. I was very stressed coming in, just a lot of the school aspect. I was very interested in clinic. I did a lot of shadowing, so I felt very comfortable with the clinic aspect, but I wish I would have known really how nice it was going to be being taught by all doctors. And it really does help, because even the classes that you take where you're like, oh, there's no way this has anything to do with my career. Well, your teacher's a doctor, and then they'll point out, so in this subject, this is something I dealt with 2 weeks ago that it pertains to what you're learning. And so really just helps you kind of take a deep breath and relax about, it is very doable. And, you don't really have to worry as much as you might think you do about all of it. In general, it is a big undertaking moving into graduate school, but it's definitely doable, and it's a very good decision to make.
All right, great. So this brings us to the end of our planned questions for Q&A. Allie, Aniel, Braden, and Michelle have been nice enough to share their email addresses with you all. So if you had any other questions that you'd like to hear from a student perspective and that you'd like to talk to them directly, you can reach out to them. And of course, if you have any general admissions questions, you can always email the admissions at sco.edu. If we have not answered your questions, please take the time to go ahead and write them out in the Q&A box so that we can address them. And while you're doing that, I'll just put a plug in also for next month's webinar. So in November, we're going to have a webinar session on preparing for the profession. So this is going to be centered around the Hayes Center for Excellence. So particularly if you're thinking about going into private practice, this will be an info session that you don't want to miss. If you would like to get some more information and you have not already done so, we invite you to go to explore.sco.edu/inquiry form so that you can receive continual communication from us and even have your own personalized microsite created. As I mentioned at the beginning of the session, this is being recorded. And so we will have this available once it's downloaded down there where you see the online information sessions link, where you can actually watch that and see what's coming up in the future too. So let me take a look at the questions. Okay, Aniel, why did you choose optometry?
So I have a roundabout answer because I kind of fell into it. So I initially was pre-med. I was pre-med all the way through undergrad, like really almost up until I graduated. I graduated with 2 degrees, so I did 5 years. So within my 5th year, I'm still shadowing. I'm studying, and I was shadowing within a hospital, and I'm shadowing different types of doctors. And I shadowed with an ER doctor, and his wife was an optometrist, and he encouraged me to shadow an optometrist just to expand my view a little bit of the different types of doctors that were out there. And so I went and I shadowed an optometrist, and I was there all the time. I didn't even know that I was I just kept coming back to it. There's just something different about it, just something different about the patient interactions that I got. I just really enjoyed the one-on-one interactions and actually being able to there was a more immediate effect, and people really knew what you were doing for them. And whether it was on the medical side or on the optical side, people, I feel like, had a better grasp of what was happening, and you could actually sit there and talk to them and answer to them. So I was finding myself there every single day within this practice that I was shadowing. And then I was there so much that she hired me there, and I worked there for 2 years. And after working there for 2 years, she's like, you need to apply for optometry school. She's like, this is obviously something you were meant to do. So that's, I literally fell into it.
So let's see, Allie, what is the skill that you enjoy the most or the hardest skill that you have learned so far while in school?
I think that's pretty tricky, but I think anything that you do in the slit lamp, especially fundoscopy, that is very satisfying and very enjoyable when you get, especially when you get a really good view. Some patients are harder than others, but I definitely enjoy that. And I think the hardest would be the hardest for me personally is definitely direct ophthalmoscopy. I find that very difficult to get inside people's pupils for that. But good skill nonetheless. Maybe a close second would be gonioscopy.
All right. So for Aniel and Allie, how many externships do you do during your 4th year, and where are y'all trying to do them? Is there a list that you get to look at?
Yeah, so for the 4th year, we have a summer, a fall, and a spring term. One of those terms is going to be here on campus at the Eye Center. And then for the other 2 terms, you get to pick a place that you want to go. One of those is going to be a private practice, and then the other one is going to be some kind of institutional site. So like a hospital or a VA or like a community health center, something like that. And there are sites all across the country, so many of them, that you get to kind of rank your preferences, and then your whole class tries to figure out who's going to go where. And it's really exciting when you get your assignments. So the official list of sites doesn't really get released to you until late in your second year, early third year in the summer. But we have, I don't know, maybe there's some kind of list online of some historically that have been used a lot, but I'm not sure about that. But it is a lengthy and exciting process all at the same time. Personally, for me, I'm going to be at a community health center in California for my institutional site, and then all the way up in New Hampshire for my private site between 2 semesters. So there's a lot of variety.
And Danielle, where are you going?
So I'll be at a private practice in Lafayette, Louisiana, and I'm doing my institutional at Milan Eye Center in Atlanta, Georgia.
All right. So how many of you are part of SPOSH?
I am. I think.
Okay. And you talked about it a lot, Allie, already. So.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Are there many opportunities for specializing or working in peds? How about Braden?
Yeah, so you get a lot of work in pediatrics, and then a lot of other classes that really kind of revolve around pediatrics, things like binocular vision. So you will have a lot of work in pediatrics, and there are actually a lot of really pediatric-based doctors at SCO who specialize, do research and everything in pediatrics. So you'll get more than your fair share of pediatrics, which again leads to opportunities to doing things like residencies, fellowships, or your externships, like they were talking about, in places that specialize in pediatrics. So definitely lots of opportunity to get a good base in all of those things.
Braden, I think you get another question here. So what is life like for those who might be married or have children?
Absolutely. So I am married. I do not have children. There are at least 3 members of my class that have children as well. It's really not very much different. So I attended my first year while I was engaged and 12 hours away from my now wife. So that was a lot, just being away for that year. But with all the planning and things that goes into a wedding, it's not too. There's never a dull moment, even from 12 hours away. So, other than having to find someone to live with, it's really not all that different. It is, a little bit more difficult maybe to find time at places like your own home when you have, things like COVID come up where you do have to spend a lot of time doing school from home. So it's, important to designate an area or, some time at home just to that. But again, lots of people that I know here at SCO are married, especially, and some do have children as well. So definitely something that's doable. So
Great. So all of you are out-of-state students. Now, obviously, we are in the middle of a pandemic, but how often do you get to visit home? Michelle?
Yeah, I would say that I visit home when things were back to normal. Kind of every chance that we had a break, a holiday break, or we have a fall break in October, usually for academy. So I would usually go home during that. And then there are some weeks where we have a lighter week in terms of school, like we don't have a practical exam or we don't have a quiz coming up, then I'll usually try and go home for the weekend. So I would say maybe like 3 times a semester at least, and then maybe 4. And I usually have to fly home. So for those who live closer by, they can probably go home more frequently.
Aniel, how often do you get to go home?
So, being from Atlanta, the drive is usually around 6.5 hours. I tend to go home after our midterm exams and, like Michelle said, our long weekends that we might have. And so I go about home about the same, about 3 to 4 times a semester, because we are still in a professional program. So I do try to keep on top of my studies. So I try to stay here and, stay on top of my work also.
All right. So do students usually keep their cars or do they take public transportation? How accessible is Memphis? Allie?
Most people do have their own car. I know of a couple students who, like in our class, in our third year class, who have not had a car, and it's been fine, especially if you live around a lot of other students, like on Mid Island. It's easy, it's really easy to get a ride wherever you need to go. And also, if you live really close to the school, then obviously that keeps your transportation down as well. I wouldn't say that very many people attempt public transportation, but with a car, everything is really accessible, and you don't really have to go very far for anything. It's mostly quick trips.
Is there a particular method, so pencil or paper or a certain app that you might use that works best for taking notes during your classes? Braden?
Yeah, so this is one thing I noticed when I got to STO. I was more of a pencil and paper kind of guy in undergrad, and so most people do have either everybody has to have a laptop at least or an iPad. I have noticed that the people with iPads are really very efficient. I have a MacBook, but um, the people with the iPads, and sometimes they have sort of like the little pen feature that really helps to take good notes. I've noticed. But yeah, typically people have a computer that they take most of their notes on. I know some people take notes on paper, but the professors all um, post most of their, either PowerPoint or PDFs online. So really, it does help to have most of your notes taken on a computer.
Aniel, when you begin studying for boards, how does SCO help you with that process? Is there anything that's implemented in the schedule to help make time for boards prep?
So I'd say they're very understanding when it comes to making your schedule. You do have built-in off days within your schedule, and you can do with those days whatever you wish, whether it's catching up with board studying or catching up with classroom work, or just taking some time to, if you're caught up with everything, just taking some time to relax. So there is time built into your schedule where you do have at least one off day during the week. And then every once in a while, you'll maybe have 2 off days during the week. So as a third year, all of our clinical schedules are different. They look different, a little different every week. But those days are built into our schedule. And so that has been greatly beneficial. And I don't think anybody has struggled with that yet. We just started board studying. And so there is a balance and a lot of time management, but it's definitely been doable.
So Michelle, aside from an anatomy class, what other classes would you say that you might need to take outside of the prerequisites to help you form a good foundation?
I would recommend, that's a really good question. I would recommend taking a neuroscience class if you can. The eyes are really connected to the brain, and it would really be beneficial to have like at least some sort of background in neuro, so that when you take some more advanced neuro classes here, you can kind of have that foundation in the back of your pocket. I would also recommend maybe taking some kind of like governmental class to learn about just how like the government is structured, because as Allie mentioned earlier, a lot of optometry is legislative, and if you know how, like, who to talk to and how to get your point across, we can really advance this field in the legislative aspect. And then I guess another potential area that you could kind of get a head start on is pathology. A lot of we're learning in second year that a lot of ocular disease orients or starts in the body somewhere else, like systemically. Having a foundation of cancer or just like the various pathologies that diseases that you can get throughout the body would really help, because optometry has a lot of implications with connections throughout our entire body. So those are probably the three that I would recommend.
Great, thank you. So how practical was it for you guys to move to Memphis, since you guys, again, came from out of state? Allie?
I think it was not terribly difficult at all, honestly. I think between like all of your current support systems, like parents and friends and whatever else you might have, like physically getting here, however far you are, might look different ways. But SCO has a really good network of support for that too. Like they put on this housing fair every year for people who are committed to coming, and they have different ways of helping you find a roommate with different classmates if you're looking for that. Finding different apartment complexes or realtors if you're wanting to buy a house or something like that. So the school is really helpful in presenting you options, whatever it is that you're looking for, and getting the ball rolling in that aspect. So yeah, I think it was actually a pretty smooth transition for me. Even being out of state, I found 2 roommates that I've never met before, also from different states. And we found a great place on Mud Island that we still like. And yeah, it was a pretty smooth transition for me and for a lot of our classmates. So I think it's not terribly scary for being out of state at all.
And I know we touched on this earlier about living in Memphis, but do you guys actually like living in Memphis? I know we talked about some of the fun things that you guys do when you have some free time, but do you enjoy it? Braden?
I love living in Memphis. So it was one of the things that a lot of people ask me about moving to Memphis is coming from a small town. You know, how are you going to do the big city life and whatnot? And the nicest thing about Memphis is that it has a really small town feel. Like my even my drive to school every day is even shorter in Memphis, which is a city of what 650,000 as opposed to the town of 20,000 that I came from. So my drive to school is even shorter now, which is wild to me. And on top of that, there's so much to do. Lots of local breweries, places to stay active. Like I mentioned, Memphis Rocks. Um, 2 weeks ago, I went out on a whim and went axe throwing, which was awesome. Just things that you really never would get to do in a small town like where I'm from. You can just find anything to do here for whatever you like to do. Memphis has it. So
Great. So Michelle, you mentioned a couple of times about public health and policy. Someone was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on your background in this field, whether it's from undergraduate or from optometry school.
Sure. I studied neuroscience and public health in undergrad, so kind of did a double major in that. And I really think that public health is super important for optometry, because not only are we providing primary eye care, but we're also the first line providers of preventative care too, because everything that you see within the eye, those are live blood vessels that you see, and those blood vessels run throughout your body. And public health is all about just finding things early and helping to get people equal treatment, no matter what background they're from, what ethnicity they are, where they came from. Like everybody comes from a different situational background. But public health is about equalizing that for everybody. And with optometry, we really have the opportunity to do that. If we find things early, we can get them to the right primary care providers or get them to the ER, whatever is needed. And I think that if we advocate more for our field through policy, like through legislative means, and talking to higher up people who can create laws that allow us to do more in optometry, then we really can make a bigger difference in the public health sphere and in the healthcare field. So yeah, just my background in that has really made me care about it a lot and want to carry it out through my practice in the future.
And so in regards to neuroscience classes, approximately how many of those do you take in the curriculum? Or does the topic often come up in different classes? Anya?
The topic definitely comes up throughout your classes and throughout really like it touches on everything that you learn. It will touch in ocular anatomy. You do specifically take a neuroanatomy class, and then in binocular vision, there's just little tidbits throughout your curriculum where you'll touch on neuro. But specifically, there's two classes that you'll take. There's neuroanatomy your first year, and then neuro eye disease your third year.
Great. Brayden, how many hours did you spend studying for the OAT? And did you study for the OAT while you were still taking some undergraduate courses?
No, I did not study during school. So I took my OAT in June in the summer. So I really just kind of made the plan to deal with my school. And then once I was done, really hit the OAT material hard um, during the summer. So what I did, I graduated or I finished school my junior year, like early May, and I took the OAT about mid-June. So for that month, I spent probably a good 5 to 6 hours at least a day studying for it. So I kind of crammed a little bit into a smaller period than I would have if I could go back, but um, it all worked out just fine. So yeah, I spent quite a bit of time in that month and a half, I think it was before I took it, but I did not study during my undergrad courses. So
Okay. So Allie, how does SCO help students get opportunities in the job market after graduation? Are there any resources that are available to students to help them find potential job placement?
That's a good question. I think the Hayes Center for Practice Excellence is definitely a bright, shiny answer for that. We actually have a class right now as third years about practice operations and management and strategies that go into working as an optometrist. And part of that is definitely spearheaded by the Hayes Center, and they're already getting us thinking about what kind of jobs we want, what it means to find a good opportunity, and knowing what it is that you're signing up for when you're committing for one, and all that kind of thing. And something else that the Hayes Center does is they have this kind of internal matching service where lots of optometrists around the country can post in this service, like software thing, different job opportunities that are available, and it's exclusively available to SCO students. So that's a great way that us students now, as well as maybe even a few years or down the road after we've graduated, it's available to just us to be able to make those connections, reach out to new places if we want to change what we're doing. And lots of people find their first job that way, second job, you name it. So I think that's a really good resource. And then also just kind of tying it back to the class size concept, that's honestly how I see it, a really good foundational networking strategy, because we have so many people in our class that we're working with, getting to know, that we might be working with out in the field as well. And not only the people that we are seeing right now as students that are here at SCO at the same time, but that means there are so many alum that are out there practicing right now who also love SCO and know how well we are being trained, and they want to hire us. And they love talking to us and hearing what we're interested in and what we want to do and how they can help us get there. So that's what I've got to say about that. I think it's phenomenal what SCO can do in this community.
Great, thank you. Did any of you guys use the OAT Destroyer to prepare for the OAT exam?
I used it for organic chemistry and physics. And I thought it was really helpful. They had a lot of practice problems especially for those two subjects. I would say, practice is probably the key for those. Whereas some of the other subjects, I use like a Kaplan book and it was more rote memorization. So I would recommend it from my experience.
So our last question for the night, and this will be for all of you to address. So once you've graduated from SCO, what are your optometric profession plans? Sonia?
So right now I plan on completing a residency in primary care and ocular disease. And then I would like to work in an OD/MD practice, possibly a hospital-based practice or community health-based practice.
Great. Braden?
I plan, so like I said, I am married. So my current plan is just to go into private practice when I'm done here at SCO, sort of subject to change based on what happens in the next year, I suppose. But the plan for now is to go back into rural Kansas and practice in some sort of a primary care setting in a private practice type situation.
Allie?
I'm thinking similar to Aniel. I really want to explore residencies and complete one of those in the year after graduation. I'm thinking maybe one in community health optometry or cornea and contact lenses. Those are kind of my top contenders right now, but not quite sure what modality will come after that.
And Michelle?
I'm thinking of potentially going down either two paths. One is ocular disease or vision therapy, and kind of just hoping that, with more experience in classes, that I'll get more clarity on that. But also hoping to practice either in a community health center or some kind of interdisciplinary practice in a big city of some kind.
All right, thank you. Well, I really want to thank all of you who joined us this evening. Thank you to all of the attendees. And thank you to Allie, Aniel, Braden, and Michelle for giving us your time tonight and for giving us such unique perspectives and comprehensive answers regarding student life and what it's like to live in Memphis, especially if you're a transplant. So we hope this has been informative, even encouraging to you. If you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to one of them or general admissions as well, and I can respond to that. Again, we hope to see you in November for preparing for the profession, and I'll be sending out more information on that in the coming days. We hope that you have a good night, and we'll see you next time. Bye.